That's been through two primary vehicles. One has been using psychedelics, which was a phase of my life, I'd say, for about 8 or 10 years. And then also going to meditation retreats and really sitting for a long time and having a pretty well-practiced sense of sitting and letting things pass. And when I don't have the visual stimuli, it's a lot easier to kind of fall into a deeper place because I'm not being as distracted.
Join the Discovering Your Mind Facebook group and enjoy discussions, ask questions, and participate in the podcast in fun and unique ways. Aphantasia is a condition characterized by an inability to visualize mental images in one's mind. If you have just discovered that you or someone you love has aphantasia, or if you're just fascinated by the subject in general and love learning more about it, you are in the right place. The Discovering Your Mind podcast delves into all aspects of the mind's eye, including aphantasia, hyperphantasia, and everything in between. Welcome to the Discovering Your Mind podcast, brought to you by shanesbraindomain.com. I am your host, Shane Williams, also known as Shane's Brain, and today we're exploring experiences from people with aphantasia and hypophantasia that have had moments of visuals or visualization of some sort that is outside the normal everyday experience. I have several guests with me today, and I'm grateful for each one of them for coming on to share their experiences. So I would like to welcome everybody to the podcast. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. The people joining me today all have aphantasia or hypophantasia. So just so we're all on the same page, I'm going to read a quick definition of each. Aphantasia is a condition characterized by an inability to visualize mental images in one's mind. In other words, aphantasia is an image-free imagination, or aphantasia is a blind mind's eye. People with aphantasia cannot see or visualize images in their minds. Many people with aphantasia cannot experience sounds or other senses in their minds either. However, the lack of other senses in the mind are not relegated to only people with aphantasia. Hypophantasia is characterized by a low visual imagination. People with hypophantasia can describe experiences where visual imagery is very vague and lacking detail, such as simple outline or a blob. They report that the visualization is usually faint and fleeting as well. They often struggle to create mental images in their mind. They sometimes report experiencing very brief flashes of more detailed mental images in their mind. All right, so I would like to have each of my guests introduce themselves. Go ahead and tell us your name, where you're from, and if you identify with aphantasia or hypophantasia, and then we'll go from there.
Hi, my name is Donna Jensen, and I live in Cedar City, Utah, and I'm hypophantasia.
Hi, my name is Lindsey Lee. I live just north of Albany in New York, United States, and I have aphantasia.
My name is Edward Jones. I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I would say I have aphantasia, but at points maybe I fall in that middle ground between hypophantasia and aphantasia.
Hi, I'm Kristin. I'm from the wilds of Wiltshire in England, farming and military country for those people who don't know it. And I have all senses of aphantasia.
All right, very good. Great to meet you all. Excited to hear what you're going to tell us today. I'm going to start with Donna today because she's been on the podcast before and has shared at least one of her experiences before. And that has actually expanded as well. So what I want to do is just play for you real quick her little clip of her explaining one of her out of the norm experiences, and then I'll let her expand on that.
Relationship, and it was full of trauma. And when I would go to sleep at night and close my eyes, well, before I could go to sleep, I'd close my eyes at night. I could still see the room around me that I was in. And I never thought about how I couldn't visualize anything else back then at the time until I heard about this. But I think it was my mind protecting me and thinking that I needed to see all of my surroundings and to see what was going on. And it went on for years. And it didn't matter where I was. I could be in a hotel room that I'd never been in before. And I close my eyes and still see the room. And as I was talking to you about this earlier, it was in color, which is something that I don't do. And it went on for many years, and now it's gone. The trauma left, and it doesn't happen anymore.
Okay, Donna, go ahead.
All right. So I've been meditating now for about a year, and I'd never really been able to get into that deep state. And about 2 months ago, I found a new meditation. And so I was meditating, and I could see shadows. So it's the same kind of outline I can see, but they were moving, which is unusual. And I couldn't really tell what they were. And then all of a sudden I had a flash of a pink tree. I mean, vivid, bright pink leaves. And it was just a flash. So I kept watching and waiting. And a few minutes later, it came back, but it stayed a little bit longer. And it was the same tree, bright pink, had bright green leaves, vivid color. And then it kind of faded away. And I was so excited that I had finally gotten into that state. And so I've had a couple more experiences since then. Most of the time, it's just moving shadows. It always comes in a box. So the first time, this little box opened up, and I was standing at the top of the stairs. And as I walked down the stairs, there was a little girl at the bottom of the stairs, but everything was still blurry. It wasn't vivid. It was still just, but it was in color. And when I got to the bottom of the stairs, the box closed. And so I've had a couple more like that too. Like just a couple of days ago, I was assuming the box open, and I'm assuming I'm standing on a path, and I can see pine trees and a stream, and it faded away. So a few minutes later came back, and it stayed longer. It was more vivid, and I could actually see the water moving. So that was a new one too. I don't know how to explain it, but I've never been able to see the water move. It's always just been a blur. So that one was exciting too. So I've been really excited with this new meditation that I've been able to, it doesn't happen every time. Maybe, I don't know, once a week or so, but it's been a lot of fun.
Okay. So when you're having these visualizations, does it feel like it's in your mind, or does it feel like maybe it's projected out in front of you?
Oh, that's a hard one. So kind of both. The best way to describe it is I can feel myself kind of stepping back in my mind, and it's out in front of me. I'm looking at it with my eyes, but it's still in my mind. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah, it actually feels like I'm looking at it through my eyes. I'm not just,
right,
seeing the picture. I'm looking at it through my eyes.
Oh, okay. Very cool. So this is what we call a hypnagogic state, which I'm just going to read a definition for that too. The hypnagogic state is a transitional period between wakefulness and sleep. So does it feel like that to you, Donna? Like, does it ever happen to you when you're trying to fall asleep, or just in meditation?
So far, just in meditation. So I haven't really seen anything trying to fall asleep.
Okay. Sometimes there's hallucinations, visual, auditory, or tactile experiences that may seem real but are not. Sometimes sleep paralysis, the inability to move or speak despite being awake, sudden involuntary body movements, dreamlike thoughts and feelings, and heightened creativity. So do you experience any of those, Donna, when you're in that state?
I do. In fact, my body goes to sleep. So, my body goes to sleep, and I will have little twitches. Sometimes an eye will come open and go back shut, which is interesting. But yeah, every time my body goes to sleep.
I was just going to say that the jolt, I've always known as the hypnagogic jerk. And I found that when you talk to normal visualizers, when you're trying to explain hypnagogia, I use the jerk as an example of it being involuntary. And I find a lot of people understand that.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Donna, before we move on, I want to talk a little bit about that clip I opened with, where during some trauma, you had this experience where you close your eyes and see the room, which was very unusual for you. And didn't you have that happen again fairly recently?
I did have that happen again. We took a vacation to Hawaii in May. My first trip there. It was beautiful. And for whatever reason, the same thing happened there. I closed my eyes and I could see the condo around me.
And you
All
have
the days we were there, and I don't have no idea why that happened.
So strange. Anybody else have any idea why that could be happening? I've talked to Donna about this, and it's so mysterious.
I have a thought, and I don't know how out there we want to go. You know, my knowledge is limited, but there's the idea of the astral body. And then it's like the soul of the person becomes not untethered, but becomes sort of linked and floats above the body and is able to observe everything going on around them. And there's almost like a mystical cable that's connecting them to the physical body themselves. So there's this capacity to explore and see things from sort of a different kind of dimension or different kind of awareness.
If I may echo what Edward said, connection by a cord of energy for the astral body. It's interesting. We're discussing this before my vision that I had. So it is a little bit out there, and I welcome the opportunity to gently get a little bit out there for what I have to explain. But it sounds to me like your soul was looking down upon your surroundings. Could be for feeling of protection, could be for many different reasons, but I would agree with Edward. Definitely sounds to be along that track.
Yep, that sounds right. I think I'm going to agree with that too. Yep.
Yeah, I love that explanation because you have told me that it was protecting you, right? Whatever that was. Yeah.
I see it quite differently. Like most British people, I'm not very spiritual or religious, I'm afraid. But a lot of people I've spoken to who have multisensory aphantasia often think of their body and their brain as two separate entities. But whether you are in your brain or in your body seems to vary a lot between us. I'm very much in my body, and I think that's due to a lot of vertigo and tinnitus and over sensations like that keeping me in the body. And the brain sort of makes me say stuff sometimes.
All right, very cool. I love it. Yeah, I am very open-minded, and I love to hear all the different experiences that people have, no matter what they are. So yeah, feel free to be as open as you want. You're not going to get any pushback from me. All right, one last thing with you, Donna. I know you've also been on psychedelics and that you had some visual experiences with those. So just explain that real quick as well.
Yeah, when I did that, I saw a lot, very vivid, bright colors. I could see people. I could see designs, and everything stayed, right? It didn't flash. It didn't fade away. It just changed from one thing to the next and was very vivid. So it was the same kind of experience, but much more intense.
All right. Thanks, Donna. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we move on to Lindsey?
Oh, I'm anxious to hear everybody's stories.
All right. Go ahead, Lindsey.
Okay. So buckle up for this one. I need to start by saying that when I discovered I had aphantasia, as most people do, it's sort of a process, right, of maybe initially feeling cheated. You know, you kind of bewildered that other people can see so much, so rich, right? Their memories, they can replay and things of that nature. And so I was very much feeling this way before I had a vision. The other information I need to put out before I tell my vision is that I was raised very Irish Catholic, and I had some religious trauma, and I was, before this vision, considered spiritual, just not into organized religion, but I'd say mildly spiritual. I was nursing my daughter, who at the time was 2, and this was in 2018. And mind you, I also have severely deficient autobiographical memory. And for those who don't know what that is, I do not have the ability to replay memories at all from my childhood. You know, moving into this vision that I had with my daughter, I was nursing her when she was 2. And I did luckily write it out because, again, with my memory, it's important for me to recall it at times and refresh. So if you don't mind, I may read a bit of it because I think I captured it very well. It's pretty short. I was nursing her and I felt this huge wave of love come over me. It just engulfed and enveloped me. And I was totally awake. I wasn't on drugs. I didn't have any alcohol in my system. I didn't have any medication, nothing. It was a bright room with an empty chair in it. I went to a different place completely while I was awake, and it felt more real than our reality. It felt like I woke up from a dream and, oh yeah, this is reality. That was just a dream. So that's how it was hyper realistic to me. While I was there, I learned that you're never without anyone you've ever loved. It was like we had one universal mind and heart that was pure love. So I could be visiting like my grandmother and 4 other people literally instantaneously because there was no time where I was, and that was being explained to me. By the way, it was being explained almost telepathically, instantly. I knew what they were saying and they knew what I was saying without speaking. I didn't feel rushed or like I wasn't spending enough time with someone else because there was no time. I remember thinking of all the lifetimes we've had because we are eternal and how we're all one. No one is ever lost or forgotten about. Everyone is loved. Everyone is connected. No one was a stranger. I looked out at a sea of faces and I recognized them all, and they all were gently smiling at me with love. And it was love on steroids. I didn't feel anything other than what I could describe as love, but love for everyone and everything. Now, here's the thing: 0 fear, anxiety, sadness, confusion. I also have an anxiety disorder, so I know very much what that is like. There was none of that whatsoever. I felt complete clarity. I didn't want to leave, but then I remembered my baby and my family, and I didn't know if it meant I was somehow dying. And I still wasn't scared, but I said I wanted to go back, and that was that. But within there, I wanted to add that I had been very caught up in thinking about past lives and reincarnation and being fearful that my current family, who I love very much, would somehow almost forget about me if they were to have another family one day. And I learned that day that it's not possible because we're all energy without physical bodies in the spiritual realm, and that we're all almost a spark of source, God, creator. If you just pictured like an eternal flame, we're all a spark. You can light an infinite number of sparks from an eternal flame, right? So it was explained to me that an eternal flame can light an infinite number of other flames. There's never an end. A part of us will always remain non-physical, like universal consciousness. Every memory, event, interaction is stored there for eternity. We're source energy here on Earth in physical form, but also part of universal consciousness for eternity. So like you could light from an eternal flame a candle, and then more flames from that one candle, meaning that a part of us is always in part of universal consciousness. So I need to go back to say that before this vision, I was not that spiritual. I mean, I sort of had remnants of Catholicism a little bit. I believed in a God, but this all hit me and it changed my life forever. I have had that one vision that was clearer than I'm looking at you right now in 3D on this earth plane. I've never had another vision, but it was so powerful that I would give up all of my memories of this lifetime and have aphantasia with 0 complaints to have had the vision that I had. The last thing I wanted to add was that I am so grateful for aphantasia, because if I didn't have it, I would have thought that I was just dreaming, that it was just a dream, a daydream. I can't follow a guided meditation to save my life. I can't see anything. It's never worked for me. So it just made the vision that more powerful for me. And I became a certified Reiki master after the fact. And I realized I also have autism. My senses are different. And I feel that I may lack visual capabilities, but I'm highly intuitive and can feel energy. So I got tapped into that from this vision as well.
Beautiful.
Wow,
I
that's
love
beautiful.
that.
That is beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I have a question. Do you have any insight, or have you ever talked to people who do visualize in their normal everyday life, who have had visions, and what the difference there is? How can they tell the difference? Do you have any insight on that?
The only conversation that I've had was actually with a very dear Native American shaman friend. And she asked me a question about my vision. And she said, she asked me about my aphantasia. She said, how does it make you feel? And I said, I feel like I won the lottery, because without it, I have no confusion that was a true vision. And she sort of agreed with that point, but I haven't had the opportunity to discuss with people who do visualize. I would imagine that it's difficult to sort of tell the two apart. At least that's what I think I would have a difficult time doing. But
yeah, I need to bring someone on that can answer those questions. Anyway, very great. Is there any other experience? Is that the only one, or have you ever had any other outside the norm experiences?
When I am doing my Reiki work, I see colors at times, just not visually. It's just like a knowing. And I think some people might know what I'm talking about if they have ever experienced it too. It's like a knowing. It's like you just look at them and you just know the color is green, but you don't actually see, around the individual, like with your mind's eye or physically see the color. So it's just kind of knowings that have popped into me from doing the energy work, but nothing else visual. And because I have severely deficient autobiographical memory, I go back and review the vision that I wrote out at times too, to just make sure I have that forever, because that is my one. And I'm good with one. If I only ever have that one, that was a good one.
It was amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Lindsey. Read the book that inspired this podcast, Aphantasia and Beyond, available on shanesbraindomain.com and Amazon. All right, go ahead, Edward.
I'll start just saying that baseline, I have aphantasia. That's the way that I would describe it. And I resonate with everything that I hear on Shane's podcast, everything you hear about online. That's where a lot of the information is being passed between people, comparing experiences. Although I would say there's like a sense of, I don't know what it is exactly, because I have a really rich intuition. Like the information's all there, but I can't access it in a sensory way. I would say it's a 5-sense aphantasia. Yet I really like the analogy of the computer where the monitor is just kind of turned off. That one really resonates and fits. But I have had experiences where I've been able to visualize to maybe not a full degree, but like to a degree that really leaves an impression and feels more maybe connected to how other people like regularly perceive the world, or like their internal experience. So that's been through 2 primary vehicles. One has been using psychedelics, which was a phase of my life, I'd say, for about 8 or 10 years. And then also going to meditation retreats and really sitting for a long time and having a pretty well-practiced sense of sitting and letting things pass. And when I don't have the visual stimuli, it's a lot easier to kind of fall into a deeper place because I'm not being as distracted. In terms of direct experiences, probably the most profound was I was sitting with ayahuasca. And, a lot of the time, if I'm having an experience like that, I'll feel all of the emotions, but I won't necessarily have like the visual reflection of what's going on. And that can be really jarring. You know, if you're going through this wave of anxiety and joy and, you know, reflection, but without having like the context of what the feeling is a response to, you know, which makes me think that maybe the images or everything else is happening, but I'm not necessarily able to see it, but something is perceiving it. But I remember one specific instance where I was sitting, and this was like an all-night ceremony. I had access to these really powerful, like fluorescent colors just in my mind's eye, and maybe not like the minute details of like, you know, the physical qualities of a person or the physical qualities of like a landscape, but I knew what it was and I could see it, you know, and I had the reference point of not being able to see it all in my daily life. So it was a stark contrast, you know, this sense of like, you know, a godly woman just pouring something into my mind. So this sense of gold, you know, like liquid gold, and I could see it, you know, maybe it was something I would have been able to verbalize, like just through my senses, just like the sense of something liquid, but I was actually able to visualize it in a way that I have never really been able to do before. So there are a lot of different qualities to that, just things that happen, but overall it was just a different kind of experience than I was used to. And then the second one I wanted to bring up was just a meditation retreat I went to in Colorado. And it was a week-long, more or less silent meditation retreat. I just remember visualizations of a tree. That was probably the most profound one. And being able to almost like feel into the different aspects of the tree. So it was merging this intuition that I typically have in my daily life with the actual visual component of it. And I guess just to end talking about like these specific experiences, I've had other ones where, you know, maybe I get the capacity to see color, not like see like visual images, but to see like streaks of paint going across like my inner eye. Oftentimes it's like very like kind of striking colors like fluorescent greens or fluorescent yellows, and they carry a lot of energy or carry a lot of emotion. You know, maybe it's like an energy or a color that kind of reflects like purging or like reflects a sort of like, you know, sense of spiritual safety or whatever the experience, and it corresponds with the color that's essentially streaking across my inner eye.
With any of these experiences, really, does having your eyes closed or your eyes open have any change or effect on the visualizations or the things that are happening?
I would say that I'm able to pay attention to the nuanced aspects of what's going on. When I have my eyes open, I'm so used to just perceiving the world, and, you know, I can experience different states of what's reflected outside. You know, oftentimes I feel like the way that I'm perceiving the world around me is going to be reflective of what's going on internally as well. Like if I'm feeling like I'm in kind of a blissed out place for some reason or another, then externally things take on like a crispness, like an HD quality, but it's not like I'm seeing the visual aspects that I'm experiencing internally in the world around me, if that makes sense.
You might want to look up closed eye hallucinations. You can see a Wikipedia page on them, and I get the sparkles a lot, but there is one of moving sort of paint bits and shapes. Often when people come on saying that they see sparkles or flashes of colour with their eyes closed, I point them to that Wikipedia page just to see if that's what they're experiencing.
All right. So while we're on that subject real quick, I want to share my only experience when I was on psilocybin. With my eyes open, everything was just kind of dancing around and there was great contrast. But when I closed my eyes, I just saw these beautiful colors and patterns and swirls, and it had extreme depth. It was like a whole nother world that I could enter into, and I just kind of got lost in there. That was my only experience with visuals of any type. I didn't see any images or anything, but I did see those patterns and those colors. And it only happened when my eyes were closed. So just those of you who have also experienced psychedelics, did your eyes open and your eyes closed make a difference?
Eyes closed was definitely different for me too. It was the same thing. That's where I saw all the colors and the patterns. But with my eyes open, that's kind of when I could see the people. I could do that with my eyes open.
Okay.
It's interesting.
I have a specific experience, and there are probably a few I could draw from, but this one was when I was using DMT, and there was a visual component that took place with my eyes open, and it was like there was a big spherical kind of grid that was overlaid over everything, and it almost felt like the grid was like a conduit of energy. There was like a brightness to it. There was like something sort of moving. And when I closed my eyes at that point, I don't remember like a really significant internal visual experience, but that's part of why I said earlier, like sometimes it feels like even if I can't see what's happening internally, it'll like reflect itself in terms of like how I'm seeing the world around me.
All right. Anything else, Edward, before we move on to Kristin?
I don't think so.
All right. Thanks much. All right. Go ahead, Kristin.
I have nothing conscious going on inside my head unless I speak. I sub-vocalize to communicate with my brain. Most of the time, I'm just in watching mode. So like when you're watching a TV and it's your favorite episode and you're really into it, and a thought pops in your head, you weren't thinking about that thought. But for me, I would then have to say something that unlocks the data that comes with that thought. So I'm kind of that far extract. None of this has been brought on by any form of depression or trauma, or I've never used any non-prescription drugs. I've just always been this way. In England growing up, it's a lot about everything's right. You do things the right way. So I'm told talking to yourself is the first sign of madness, repeatedly, even though you're trying to think by speaking. But another thing was hearing things, sign of madness. So I can remember quite frequently as a child, I would be going to sleep and I'd suddenly hear someone shout my name really loudly. This is another form of hypnagogia, which we've been talking about. And I would try and suppress that as much as I could, because to me, that was the madness, not the norm. People hearing things. I've been told since that it can be classed as exploding head syndrome. So you hear a loud bang or a loud shout, and you usually get the burst of adrenaline with it. So, of course, with hypnagogia, real pain, because you're suddenly awake again, the same as with the hypnagogic jerk. I used to always kick a lot. But I have very, very vivid dreams. And I'd never associated the fact that I couldn't see during the day, but I had these very vivid fantasy dreams at night until I heard about aphantasia. And I realized that I have almost every form of visualization, involuntary visualization, that there is out there. When I think of a very vivid memory, I will get a split-second image that immediately disappears of that memory. I get, as I said, very vivid dreams. And since I've realized that this is actually a normal thing, I've stopped suppressing the hypnagogia. I've also, unfortunately, ended up on rather a lot of painkillers. And so I find myself sometimes getting sleepy through the day. And I've now started getting full-on hypnagogic visuals as well. I haven't yet had sound and vision at the same time, but I've either had one or the other. I find it quite interesting that some of you were saying that you'd seen a tree, because my most vivid one has been a tree, but it was very, very clear. And yes, I've started to quite often feel that I'm seeing shapes as I go to sleep now, whereas before it was only ever the sound calling my name.
I'm very interested to know, when you read, Kristin, are you able to visualize what you're reading in the book?
My reading is very strange.
Okay.
I'm hypolexic, as is my brother, who is a hyperphant. So this is not linked to my visuals or lack of. We both have this extra gear and it's like I'm viewing the page. I might be scatter reading. I start off reading and doing the sub-vocalization in my head, as I would if I was dictating an email to myself. And then it just switches and I'm in flow mode. And I can easily read sort of 3 novels in a day like that.
But you can't see any of the imagery if they said this boy was at a beach and walking along the shore. Can you visualize that?
No, why do I need to?
No, I agree. I just
Right.
was wondering if you could.
One of the things I'd like to discuss is what it sounds like to me is in these experiences, whether it's having a vision, psychedelics, hypnagogia, or just, hypophantasia, it seems like the main difference that I'm picking up in is people who can actually visualize can do what Lindsey was talking about, read a book and visualize what they want to visualize, where all of these other things that we're talking about, it's not voluntary. We don't see what we want to see. We see what we're shown, right? Does everybody agree with that? Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that's a main distinction that I'm picking up on.
It does seem to be neuroprotective. They initially thought it was only a brain injury or a severe depressive mood or state that gave you aphantasia. If you recall, the original study by Exeter had roughly half and half of the 2 groups. And it was only when they published that 15,000 people got in touch going, I've always been like this.
Right.
I have a couple questions and comments for Kristin. In response to the last thing you said about it being a protective mechanism, I have an older brother, and when I was talking to him about just internal perception, because it's been a curiosity, just asking different people about that, the way he described his experience was identical to mine. And I have 3 siblings, and it's sort of 2 of us and then 2 of us in terms of like the pockets and like the close relationships. I really wonder about how early childhood experiences might have impacted the way that I experience like an inner world. So I think you mentioned just how it's a defense mechanism, and I think Donna might have mentioned that as well, and that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I've personally have a friend who lost their ability to visualize through childhood neglect and has since recovered the ability to visualize, but has an episodic memory gap of the bad years.
Interesting. How did she sort of develop that ability?
By being happier.
Really?
I'm afraid. I think it was as simple as that. I have another personal friend who's also confided that they lost the ability. They are still in a bad place. They haven't regained the ability. So all I can say is it appears that, yes, they originally thought that was one of the main ways of getting aphantasia, but it seems that the congenitals like myself probably outweigh it a lot. But I reckon I've had this all my life because, as you're probably aware, face blindness or prosopagnosia comes with aphantasia a lot. Now, most children, their first word is like mum or no. My first word was, who is it? And my second word was, what's that? And I just learned that I could sit there going, who is it? Who is it? What's that? What's that? So I think I've had this since before I could speak.
Right. Yeah, I too identify. I feel like I've had it my entire life.
I will share that I had some childhood trauma, and I was trying to tease out if it was aphantasia I've had my whole life, or am I blocking out some of my childhood memories? And I don't know the medical term for having memories of how you felt versus visual memories, but I had completely no visual or emotional memories. And, you had been asking Kristin, how did you work through that? Your friend worked through that. And I just want to say I have come leaps and bounds. And it's been about protecting my peace, forgiveness, really just digging into who I am and letting go of holding on to past grudges. And it really comes down to loving myself as much as I ever could want somebody to be loved. I picture myself as a little girl often when I try. And I don't really see myself, but I can emotionally feel what it would feel like to hug my smaller self. And in doing that over the past couple of years since my vision, I don't have visual memories back of my childhood, but I have a lot more emotional recall, if that makes sense. So I feel like I've done some progress, really turning inward and working through forgiveness and doing shadow work is what got me to a better place.
With me, it's weird. I don't get emotional recall, but I can remember a day and I can remember how I felt, and then I can recreate the emotion deliberately.
Wow.
So like, I'll remember my wedding day. I'll remember that I was happy. Then I will smile and feel happier. It's like a physical thing. I'm very demonstrative with my hands as well. I remember movement. That's what I know. I reimagine the feeling. I refeel it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, yes, occasionally we all have very bad memories. Like I recently lost my dog, and there will be times that I will think of something and an emotion does come then, but that's very, very rare.
With the visual people that I talk to, it seems like their memories are more up close and personal. They're like right here, they're right in their face. Where mine are there, I have my memories, but they're more distant and more vague, not so up close and personal. Another thing I wanted to mention was we've talked a lot on the podcast about, the trauma, how much of aphantasia may be caused by trauma, escaping those memories. And I think it's just interesting to note, too, that in Donna's case, the trauma opened up a visual rather than closing it down, which is what we normally think about. Does anybody have any insight or thoughts on that dynamic?
I mean, I do from a spiritual side, absolutely. I think the answer to that, in my opinion, is that you had a spiritual experience. I believe with all my heart that's what it was. It was definitely astral in that sense. Plain as day. For me, that's how I would interpret what you experienced, Donna. I'm sure there are other opinions.
From your spiritual perspective, Lindsey, is the opposite a spiritual experience as well? Like, is the soul or that part of you protecting you from trauma in taking away those images?
Absolutely. I believe that with all my heart. And I believe that we have, and this is just my belief, that we have spirit guides. We have a team that helps guide us through. And I do believe that in some of our hardest times that they are there to protect us, to guide us. I just have to say, I know I sound so sure about this, but in my vision, the colors were more vibrant. It was more of a color spectrum than there even was here. Everything was crisp. I remember Edward using the word crisp. It was like everything was in high definition. Nobody will ever convince me otherwise about what I experienced. So that's why I sound so passionate about it. But I do believe that for Donna's experience, that was very likely a team helping you at that time.
Yes. Well, I like that we're talking about the spiritual aspect of it, because I've never been religious, and I've just kind of never really been in that space. But over the last year or so, I've gotten a lot more spiritual. And that's when most of these experiences have started to happen. So, Lindsey, your vision really resonated with me. It got a little bit of tears in my eyes. It was beautiful.
Okay, Kristin, I know that you come at this from a more of a scientific lens than a spiritual lens. So do you have any thoughts on more of a scientific answer for some of these things?
Well, they've proven through fMRI imaging that we access our memory, but we don't activate our visual cortex. And I would suspect that the message, wherever it comes from, is strong enough to break through whatever is holding it back.
Okay, thank you. I love it. By the way, I love the different perspectives. Like I said, I'm super open-minded, and I love to hear everybody's different takes on things, even though I certainly have my own, but I love to hear it. So is there anything else before we wrap up that you would like to discuss or talk about?
Just adding to that same thread, where I don't necessarily feel like I fall in the strictly secular or strictly spiritual sort of point of view. I feel like it's synthesized to some degree. But there's a natural mechanism that happens in like a developing child where if they experience a certain kind of trauma, they might protect themselves by falling into a dissociative state. Mm-hmm. And then if that happens, oftentimes, I think all the time, I think often this is sort of how trauma metabolizes itself, but it might exist in the body, like somatically maybe, or just experience almost like it's saved somewhere. And it's like this fractured off version of the individual at whatever age the trauma might have happened. And I think when we are able to relive an experience, especially holding that child that experienced it, but holding it as an adult, that can be illuminating because we're able to feel what we suppressed in the past and able to feel it like in a more like active kind of light. And I think that can be really revealing. It's like inviting our bodies to and our minds to process something that we wanted to push away in the past. And that could have resulted in, you know, different kinds of suppression, like whether, and I don't know for sure, but like whether that might have encouraged a kind of aphantasia or encouraged a kind of limitation in what the person was able to perceive.
Yeah, good insights there. Thank you. Anyone else?
I wonder if the aphantasia and everything in me is what almost makes my dreams so vivid. I've always been able to hold a conversation with people whilst asleep based on what I'm actually seeing and doing in my dreams. Seriously, I woke up my husband by turning to him and saying, "But what if I am already Satan?" although I'm scientific, my dreams are not.
Awesome.
I have one last thing. I'm going to go outside and I'm going to hug my big, beautiful tree in my front yard. You know, it seems like we all have something with trees, and I just feel like they're very important in our journey. So I'm going to go hug my tree.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, follow, and engage with us, and share it with your friends and family as we continue to explore this fascinating subject. For additional information about this episode or Shane's Brain, check out the show notes. Thanks for listening to the Discovering Your Mind podcast. You are beautifully unique.